Okay, so who's got 2 thumbs and forgot to record this bit whilst I was recording the rest of it? This guy! So yeah, no Christmas tree up at the moment because this was filmed after the fact and all my Christmas shit is up in the attic. Hooray! Right, so let's talk animated legends. There were only 4 ever produced, and then they stopped, and then we never heard why. It was pretty weird how the whole situation went down. I personally think it was due to competing shelf space, because at the same time, the Universe 2008 figures were coming out, as far as I recall. Let me just double check the dates. Yep, I'm looking at the date that Animated came out, and it does seem to line up. And due to that, in several regions, including Australia, the Animated Legends figures were actually released under the Universe line, which is a bit odd, but whatever. The thing is, Transformers Animated had a very specific aesthetic. The aesthetic itself was developed beforehand, but they often went back and changed the designs because the toys would have certain elements of kibble, so they ended up changing the show models to make it more accurate. It was a very interesting choice, and I think many fans appreciated it. But how do you bring that to the Legend scale? Because you have such a small scale, you do have to make some sacrifices. But to be honest, I don't think it was that many. So what we have here are the only 4 Legends animated figures that were ever produced. Why they did not produce more of them, I don't know. Maybe they just couldn't fit them on the shelves alongside the Generations Legend. In fact, these got kind of pushed into Generations in certain markets. Pretty sure it was in Australia, marked under Generations as opposed to Animated. But whatever the case is, these guys are about as good as you could possibly get with the scale in question. Which is fine. I mean, yeah, some of them are better than others. I think the standout would have to be Bumblebee here. But in vehicle mode, yeah, they're alright. Some of them aren't the most solid, but they're alright. It does really disappoint me that we got 3 Autobots and only 1 Decepticon, which is something that even Siege ended up doing, too many Autobots, but hey, it is what it is. It's a small line, we need those Autobots. It happened in the Authentics line as well, but whatever. Optimus Prime transforms into an okay rendition of his fire truck mode in the show. It's not that great. I feel that the main downside is the lack of paint at the front here. Everything else is decent. Of course, you're not going to get any windows on the side because of the ball joints here, and it is a bit messy with how the arms work, but still, it's fine. It's about as good as the Deluxe and the Voyager version. It's not great, but it's not terrible either. You've got the huge Autobot symbol at the top here. I think it might be a little bit too big for the design, but at least you've got the light bars, and at least it's painted here. In fact, in general, this guy is painted really, really well. Around this time, the Legends figures were getting a really high paint budget before they kind of crashed around Revenge of the Fallen. Yeah, the paint budget went at that point. He's even got pinned wheels, which is a very, very nice touch. I wish they would do that. They did go back to that for most of the Speed Series figures, and I hope that they continue it for later Legion figures. I'm not sure why they've got that tab at the top there. It doesn't really make much sense in the terms of the design, but it's fine. I also don't know why they've got that part in there. Also doesn't make much sense, but whatever. It does its job just fine. Moving on to our second guy, and unfortunately I do have a bit of paint chipping at the top there, but whatever. Bumblebee is probably the best small-scale Bumblebee in the Hasbro line that I have ever handled. Now, does he hold a candle to the New Age version? Of course not. Of course he doesn't. But he's better than the Titans Return version. He's better than the sort of Universe/Classic/whatever it is version. The Legends one that transformed into the same car as the Classics one. Yeah, he's brilliant. Of course, he's got, you know, pinned wheels again. The paint is lovely. You've got grey paint on the windows all the way here and all the way to the back. And he's got an extra black bumper there, which isn't paint, it's black plastic. But it's great. And you got the red light there, even though the mine's, you know, fallen off. And yes, he does have 2 slots at the front. Also, it is a bit of a shame that they didn't print the headlights, or the taillights for that matter, but it's a Legends figure, and they've done a lot of paint on it already, so bloody good job. Now, Prowl would have to be my least favourite, simply because he's a little bit wibbly. Now, getting him to stand up is virtually impossible, so I'm just going to leave him down like that. Yeah, he's bad because he's a motorcycle. Think about it. How hard is it to do a motorcycle at this scale? Let alone how hard is it to do a motorcycle at a modern Legend scale? Let alone how hard is it to do a motorcycle transformer in general? I think motorcycles are the absolute hardest Transformers to do. out of the whole thing. There might be a couple of harder alt modes, but they are one of the hardest. And all things considered, they did an alright job. It looks more like a Tron cycle than what it actually looked like in the show, especially with the abundance of the arms here. And hey, you got the head sticking out of there, but I guess it could work as a control panel. And yeah, unfortunately the Autobot symbol's been tattered up. It came like that because I bought this second hand. But you know what? It's fine. Considering the way he has to transform, what he transforms into, it's fine. I get the hate for him, but it's all good. But who I don't get the hate for is Starscream. Well, I do get some of the hate for him, but like this guy has been bashed on quite a bit. Especially by a certain YouTuber who did all sorts of unspeakable things to him. I mean, there are some issues with it. For example, you've got the head kind of visible at the back there. These don't really tab into anything, and the arms are just left completely loose. But overall, look at how well they've captured the likeness of this jet mode. It's sleek, it's sexy, and it does the job, and it's got a lot of paint. It's not terrible like the Voyager version. It doesn't look like a piece of shit. So, you know, kudos to Hasbro for that. It's not complete garbage. Of course, getting into your average size comparisons, you've got a standard Legion figure, a standard Legends figure, a standard Siege Micromaster, a not-so-standard LEGO minifigure, and crumbs. Now, transformation-wise, with Bumblebee and Optimus Prime, we've kind of seen these transformations before. They're pretty similar to what we've seen. In fact, this guy is almost a carbon copy of the reveal the Shield Optimus Prime, and by extension, the Thrilling 30 Legends, and by extension, the Bumblebee movie Prime. First thing you want to do is bring up the legs, or bring up the feet here, more likely. What am I saying? Come around to the front here, and you undo the arms from this bumper section, and bring them down, rotate them just like the Reveal the Shield Legends one. Also, just like that, you bring the feet down, the legs down, and separate them. The entire torso swivels 180 degrees, and the head pops out like so. Just like the Thrilling 30 version, and the Reveal the Shield version, and every Optimus Prime in history. It's how they get done. They always have that fake chest swivel around, although I guess some of them don't. But hey, Earthrise seems to have one swiveling around, so hey, it's a very common Optimus Prime transformation. Bumblebee is also very similar to his Titan's Return version, except for the fact that he has a swivel at the chest, the fake chest here. But hey, the deluxe version had a fake chest, so it's just kind of replicating that. The feet fold out like so, and they lock into place. The arms then pop out like so, and then you bring the head up, and that will, and bring the entire leg section up, just temporarily. If you bring the arms forward, it becomes a lot easier to rotate this 180 degrees, and once it's rotated 180 degrees, that clips into place and you can bring the arms down again. And wow, that really did Bumblebee justice. It's a bloody good representation of the animated design. Moving on to Prowl here, I'm not sure how closely it mimics his deluxe version, but I imagine it's pretty close. You bring out these panels here, and you also untab these panels there. You then get to bring this whole section up on a hinge and a ball joint. That will then come and tab into there. You can then bring the feet down, extend everything, and you make sure the feet are collapsed in like that. You do end up with these kind of obnoxious bits of kibble. What can you do? You then bring these bits down, and they just rotate straight down like that with these ball joints on the arms, and then the head just kind of pops up. You know, that's a really good representation of the design at this scale. It's not the best in general, but if you consider how small it is, and again, he's a motorcycle transformer, it gets the job done, but I do wish he was easier to stand. So Starscream is a bit different from your traditional Seeker transformation. It's got some similar ideas, but everything's kind of stretched back, and instead of the nose cone folding down, the leg system folds down. Speaking of which, you bring the legs down a little bit, and hey, he can do a girl walk if he likes. You then take this hinge here and bring it all the way down, and then you lock that in place by bringing this section up, and that'll keep everything locked together. You then take this hinge here and rotate it 180 degrees, and that'll allow you to bring the wings up there, and the head collapses there, and you don't even need to move the arms because they're probably in the right position. And yeah, the head's a bit further up than it really needs to be, but it's a really good representation of the on-screen model, and dare I say better than the Voyager figure, although a lot of things are better than the Voyager figure, although I guess you also have to bring out the feet there. I do apologise for forgetting that. And seeing all of these four together really, really makes me wish that they had made more of them and continued this line. Can you imagine a tiny Legend scale Lugnut, or a tiny Legend scale Megatron, or I guess Blitzwing would be kind of impossible, but can you imagine a tiny Legend scale Black Arachnia? I mean, I guess we're already getting that with transform elements, but I'm not really sure about the materials on that one. Optimus Prime is your standard Optimus Prime, but he does look like he's leaning forward, which is sort of a running theme with a lot of animated Optimus Prime figures. And yeah, you do have the wheel kibble at the back here, but every Optimus Prime Legion scale figure that has this kind of transformation ends up with that, so it's to be expected. The head sculpt is fine, it doesn't really emphasize his chin very well, and they haven't painted the eyes, but it is serviceable. Going to the back, he's got very little kibble aside from the wheels here, because the bumper back here kind of just fits into his backpack. He's pretty nice, very well painted, kind of missing an Autobot symbol, but hey, I'll take it. It's a nice touch that they've actually painted these bits red. In fact, I don't think there's any red plastic on this at all, it's all paint, which actually gives him sort of a premium feel for the size class. For his articulation, you get ball joints here. This part swivels here as well as a bend. They could have just used the ball joint, but they went for the double, which works quite well. You also get a torso swivel, which can be used as a waist swivel, but doesn't really look that great. You also get ball joints here and a bit of a toe hinge, but it doesn't really do much. I do wish these could add a bit more movement, but it gets the job done, and hey, you've got lovely paint here as well. They do need more paint on the midriff section, though. That is a bit of an oversight. If they had added red plastic as well, probably would have turned out a bit better. Honestly, in terms of criticisms for Bumblebee, there really isn't much. He's just a very solid figure. I think the way that his chest is fake and the way it works with all the paint there, it just solidifies his design, as well as the utterly gorgeous head sculpt. It captures his personality ever so brilliantly. He also doesn't have that much kibble. Yeah, he's got the back of the car there and a bit of hollowness there, but it's nowhere near as bad as many Legion figures these days. It's done remarkably well. They even added an extra Autobot symbol there. Articulation's also pretty simple. The hinge doesn't really work, so you only really get the ball joint here that acts more as a swivel, unless you kind of want to get it to go across there. Ball jointed hips that get all the way out and almost all the way forward, as well as a knee that's a little bit poorly cut. Probably should have been a little bit further forward, but hey, I'll take it. It's a remarkably good-looking figure, and I think it's probably the best of the whole line. Despite the fact that Prowl is the weakest of the line in terms of construction, he still does look pretty cool. I mean, it's a pretty weird design for him, and I'm not sure why they even called him Prowl, considering Animator had a lot of throwbacks to G1, and then they went with this left field kind of thing. But hey, as Prowl from the animated series, it does a pretty good job. It is very hard to stand just because these kinds of feet wobble around here. Had that been tighter, or had there been a locking mechanism, it probably would have been better. But it is still pretty good. Unfortunately, the articulation department's a little bit lackluster. You just get a bit of a bobble of the head. But the real problem is that that's all you get on the arms, outwards. I really wish they had ball joints there. Maybe had the entire arm just be stiff. And then you get ball joints at the wrists, ball joints at the hips, and an okay bend that kind of gets stuck with the way the kibble works. You can fake it by moving the foot around, but it just kind of destroys the posability. You can fake a waist swivel by untabbing the waist, which is kind of nice, but honestly, this is really loose and just comes untabbed anyway, so yeah, he's definitely the weakest of the bunch, but he's still alright. Not great, but alright. And then this handsome son returns, and yeah, he's also pretty decent. He's definitely more solid than Prowl, just because, you know, jets are easier to do. But the one thing that really sells him is all the paint. You got black paint, you got red paint, you got orange paint, you got paint on the head that's done really, really well. Even captured his smirk. The wingspan's lovely. I mean, it's not really paint, but you get my point. From the back, he's a little bit gibbly, and he does have a tail, but it's not as bad as, say, Bumblebee's was, so it's fine. And this actually makes the whole kind of chicken leg thing work. I've seen some figures that make it look pretty ugly, but no, this does it surprisingly well. Articulation's also fine. You get more of a swivel with the head, as opposed to this one, which kind of folds like that. And then you get a swivel at the leg, which also doesn't really go out that far, and then toe hinge. So yeah, only technically 4 points of articulation that you count, and these do have a tendency to fold down a bit, but it's fine. It's alright. It's not worth chucking in the toilet. And of course bringing out your size comparisons with your standard Legion figure, and surprisingly these guys are a little bit smaller, although they are a bit chunkier. But yeah, you can see that at this point the sizes didn't really change that much. Then you've got your standard Legends figure, your standard Siege Micromaster, your not so standard LEGO minifigure, and Crumbs. And again, seeing these together, I really do wish they made more of them. It is a great disappointment. For the most part, these are really bloody good. Optimus Prime is a transformation that we've seen time and time again, probably even at this point, but it manages to replicate the full-sized figure quite well. Yes, I do understand why there's not much paint on the midriff, because they've painted this entire section red, but still, I would have preferred if it was red plastic with some midriff paint. Maybe a Takara version? Oh wait, I don't think there is a Takara version. Whoopee! Bumblebee remains the best of the bunch. Yes, he's got a tiny bit of back kibble, but he's probably the best Legends Bumblebee figure we've gotten in the main line, even compared to the Legion Legends and Legend Legends in both size classes. I know he may not be for everyone, because everyone likes their G1 aesthetics, but if I had to take only one Legion or Legend scale Bumblebee with me, this would definitely be the one. Now, I realise Starscream over here might not be the best built figure. He does have his fair share of flaws, but he's not bad. He does a lot of things right, such as a very, very well realised aesthetic, brilliant robot mode, brilliant jet mode. The only real thing I can criticise him for is the drooping wings, but I'm sure I can fix that in my own time later on. And it's probably just my copy, I don't think it affects all copies of the toy. Mine involves some pin pushing and some pin removal, but I'll get around to it eventually. The only one I can't really recommend is Prowl. I understand why he has issues, given the huge issues in general with designing a motorcycle transformer, but it doesn't change the fact that he's got gimped arms thanks to the hinges they've got here instead of ball joints, and the alt mode's a little wonky. Yes, I understand why, and it affects a lot of Transformers like this, but at the end of the day, it doesn't change the fact that he's not that great. I still enjoy him though. There is fun to be had here, and if you're a massive fan of animated, then you can't really go wrong. But if you're not, then you might as well skip him. I truly think it's a shame that these Legends figures never continued into other characters. In fact, in general, I think it's a shame that Transformers Animated didn't go much longer due to the hub network taking front stage and everything getting pretty messy there. Much as I love Prime, Animated was done dirty. Although talking of Prime, that's tomorrow's subject. Tomorrow we're going into another full review. It's back to Legion Combiners, and they are pretty difficult to do. So, let's see how they did it the second time round.